7 years at Thompson and Barrett Digital Marketing had taught me one thing. In this business, loyalty flows up, never down. I'm Olivia Mitchell, and this is the story of how my boss's attempt to replace me backfired in the most spectacular way possible. The Maxwell account needs the new campaign proposal by Friday, Robert Barrett announced, barely looking up from his phone as he strode past my desk. And I want you to bring Jessica up to speed on everything. She'll be taking point on client relations going forward. I glanced at the fresh-faced Jessica Stevens, standing in the doorway of our open-plan office in her perfectly tailored suit. She'd started 3 weeks ago, straight from her MBA program, carrying herself with the kind of confidence that comes from never having faced real failure. Of course, Robert, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I'll make sure she understands all the nuances of the account. He paused, finally looking at me. Good. The Maxwell Group is our biggest client. We can't afford any complications. The threat in his voice was clear. What Robert didn't know was that I'd seen this coming months ago. The signs were all there. Jessica's rushed hiring, the way Robert began excluding me from key meetings, the sudden restructuring of account management roles. Classic setup for my own planned obsolescence. But Robert had made one critical mistake. He'd forgotten how I'd built the Maxwell account from a small digital marketing contract into the agency's crown jewel. He'd forgotten the countless late nights I'd spent learning their business inside and out, the innovative campaigns that had doubled their market share, the personal relationships I'd cultivated with every key decision-maker in their organization. Most importantly, he'd forgotten about Thomas Maxwell EHI himself. I hear Barrett hired some hotshot MBA to replace you, Thomas had said during our secret lunch meeting last month, his blue eyes sharp, despite his grandfatherly appearance. Interesting move, considering you're the reason we've stayed with Thompson and Barrett all these years. I'd sipped my water carefully. Business decisions are complex, Mr. Maxwell. He'd laughed, a sound like warm bourbon. Please, it's Tom. And some business decisions are simpler than others. He'd slid a folder across the table, like this one. Inside was an offer that would change everything. Partnership in Maxwell's new venture capital firm, heading their digital strategy division. The salary was triple what I made at Thompson and Barrett. The equity stake was worth even more. You've got vision, Olivia, Tom had said. You understand that digital marketing isn't just about trending hashtags and viral videos. It's about seeing patterns, predicting where markets are heading, and positioning clients ahead of the curve. That's what we need in our investment team. Now, watching Jessica settle into the desk Robert had positioned right next to mine, I thought about the other folder hidden in my desk drawer. The one containing every innovative strategy I'd developed for the Maxwell account over the years. Strategies I'd carefully documented as my personal intellectual property, created outside of work hours. So, Jessica chirped, should we start with the basic account overview? I smiled, remembering how Robert had preened when introducing her as a top MBA graduate with fresh perspectives. He'd conveniently forgotten to mention my own MBA, completed at night while working full-time, or my published articles on digital marketing innovation. Actually, I said, pulling up the Maxwell files, let's start with their market positioning strategy. It's complex. For the next 4 hours, I walked Jessica through layers of data, analytics, and strategic planning that made her eyes glaze over. Robert had hired her to replace me, but he hadn't considered one crucial detail. You can't replace 7 years of expertise with 3 weeks of orientation. This is a lot, Jessica admitted, staring at the campaign metrics spreadsheet. How do you keep track of all these moving parts? Experience, I said simply, and understanding that every number tells a story. My phone buzzed, a message from Tom Maxwell. Board meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. Everything in place? I glanced at Robert's office, where he was undoubtedly planning my eventual exit. He thought he was orchestrating a smooth transition. He had no idea he was actually setting the stage for his own comeuppance. Just remember, I told Jessica, tomorrow's presentation to the Maxwell board is crucial. They'll expect detailed answers about every aspect of their digital strategy. She paled slightly. I thought you'd be handling that. Oh no, I said, gathering my things for the day. Robert was very clear. You're taking point on client relations now. I'm just here to support the transition. As I left the office that evening, Robert called out, everything set for tomorrow. I turned, offering my most professional smile. Absolutely. Jessica's fully prepared to demonstrate her grasp of the Maxwell account. He nodded, satisfied with what he assumed was my quiet acceptance of my fate. He didn't notice me touching the folder in my bag, the one containing not just my partnership offer from Maxwell Ventures, but evidence of every strategic innovation I'd developed independently. Tomorrow's meeting would indeed change everything, just not in the way Robert expected. After all, as Tom Maxwell liked to say, the best business moves are the ones your competition doesn't see coming until it's too late. And Robert Barrett was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Maxwell Group's boardroom commanded the entire top floor of their downtown headquarters, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. At 9:45 a.m., I watched Robert adjust his tie nervously as Jessica arranged her presentation materials, her confidence from yesterday notably diminished. Remember, Robert whispered to her, just stick to the basic overview. Olivia will handle any detailed questions. I suppressed a smile, thinking of the 3 calls I'd received from Jessica last night, each more panicked than the last, as she struggled to understand the complexities of the Maxwell account. Tom Maxwell entered precisely at 10 a.m., followed by his board of directors and their entire digital strategy team. I noticed several venture capital partners among them, faces I recognized from my secret meetings over the past month. Good morning, everyone, Tom announced, taking his seat at the head of the table. Today we're reviewing our digital marketing strategy and discussing some exciting new directions for the Maxwell Group. His eyes met mine briefly. I understand Thompson and Barrett has some personnel changes to announce. Robert stepped forward eagerly. Yes, Mr. Maxwell. We're excited to introduce Jessica Stevens, who'll be taking the lead on your account. She brings fresh perspectives from her top-tier MBA program and... Fascinating, Tom interrupted. And Olivia? What will be her new role? Robert's smile faltered slightly. Olivia will be transitioning to more of a support position, ensuring a smooth handover of responsibilities. I see. Tom's expression gave nothing away. Well then, Miss Stevens, please begin. I'm particularly interested in hearing your thoughts on our emerging market strategy. Jessica stood, smoothing her skirt. Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. I've prepared an overview of our basic digital marketing approach. What followed was painful to watch. Jessica stumbled through generic marketing concepts, unable to answer specific questions about the Maxwell Group's unique market position. When the board CFO asked about the ROI metrics of the latest campaign, she froze completely. Perhaps, Robert interjected, Olivia can address some of these technical details. Actually, Tom said, I'd prefer to hear Ms. Stevens' understanding of our account. After all, she is taking the lead role. The next hour was a masterclass in professional demolition. Every question revealed another gap in Jessica's knowledge. Every attempt by Robert to intervene was smoothly blocked by Tom or other board members. Let's discuss the Asian market expansion, one board member suggested. Ms. Stevens, can you walk us through the localization strategy Olivia developed last quarter? Jessica glanced desperately at her notes. The localization strategy. Yes, Tom added, the one that increased our Asian market share by 40% in 3 months. Surely Robert ensured you were briefed on that? Robert's complexion had taken on an interesting shade of gray. He knew as well as I did that the Asian market strategy had been my personal project, developed using my own proprietary analysis methods. I have those numbers right here, I offered, opening my laptop. Along with something else the board might find interesting. I connected to the room's display system, bringing up a presentation I'd prepared for this exact moment. While reviewing our strategic documentation, I realized that many of our most successful campaigns were developed using methodologies I created independently, outside of my work at Thompson and Barrett. Robert's head snapped up. What are you talking about? All work product belongs to the agency. Actually, I continued smoothly, I've maintained careful records showing when and where each strategy was developed. My personal research and innovation, done on my own time, using my own resources. I pulled out a folder of notarized documents. My lawyer has reviewed everything. These methods are my intellectual property. The room fell silent as the board members examined the documentation. Robert's attempt to speak was cut off by Tom's raised hand. Very thorough, Olivia. But why bring this up now? I clicked to the next slide, showing the performance metrics of campaigns using my methods versus traditional agency approaches. The difference was stark. Because the Maxwell Group deserves to know exactly what they're getting, or not getting, with this transition. These strategies, these innovations that drove your recent success, they're not part of the standard Thompson and Barrett playbook. They're mine. This is ridiculous, Robert sputtered. You can't just. Actually, she can, interrupted a new voice. Sarah Martinez, the board's legal counsel, had been quietly reviewing my documentation. These development timestamps and registrations are quite clear. Ms. Mitchell owns these methodologies. Which means, Tom added, his eyes twinkling, we need to discuss the future of our digital marketing strategy. All of it. Robert's face showed the first signs of real panic. The Maxwell account represented 40% of Thompson and Barrett's revenue. Without my strategies, without my relationship with the board, I think, Tom continued, we should take a brief recess. Robert, why don't you and Miss Stevens step out for a moment? Olivia, please stay. The board has some questions about your methodologies. As Robert and Jessica were escorted out, I caught a glimpse of their shell-shocked expressions. Through the boardroom's glass walls, I watched them huddle in the waiting area, Robert gesturing frantically as he pulled out his phone. Well played, Tom murmured as the board members chatted among themselves. Though I suspect Robert hasn't realized yet that this is just the opening move. I smiled, thinking of the partnership agreement in my briefcase, ready to be signed. Sometimes the best strategies aren't about the immediate victory. They're about positioning for what comes next. Tom finished, nodding approvingly. Speaking of which, he gestured to his assistant, who began distributing folders to the board members. The Maxwell Group's logo was embossed on each folder, alongside the words, Digital Innovation Division. My new department, once everything was finalized. Through the glass, I could see Robert pacing, probably calling Thompson and Barrett's senior partners. He still thought this was about keeping the Maxwell account. He had no idea that in the next hour, his agency's entire digital strategy department, the one he'd built his reputation on, would be revealed as dependent on methods they no longer had the right to use. Tom stood, addressing the board. "Shall we begin the real meeting?" I opened my laptop, ready to present my vision for Maxwell's digital future. Robert had taught me one valuable lesson over the years. In business, like in chess, the winning move isn't the first one you make. It's all the moves you've planned after that. The next hour, in the Maxwell Group boardroom, redefined the word comprehensive. I walked the board through every aspect of my digital innovation strategy, not just marketing plans, but an entire ecosystem of digital transformation that would position Maxwell Ventures at the forefront of the industry. These algorithms don't just predict market trends, I explained, displaying complex data visualizations. They identify emerging opportunities before they become obvious to traditional analysts. That's how we achieved that 40% growth in Asia, by seeing patterns others missed. The board members were fully engaged, asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and resource requirements. Through the glass walls, I could see Robert still pacing, his phone practically glued to his ear. "And you developed all of this independently?" Sarah Martinez, the legal counsel, asked. "Every bit," I confirmed, pulling up my documented development timeline. Nights, weekends, using my own resources. I knew these innovations were too valuable to simply hand over to an agency that didn't appreciate their potential. Tom Maxwell leaned forward. "I think it's time we brought Robert back in. He should hear what comes next." When Robert and Jessica re-entered the boardroom, the change in atmosphere was palpable. The board members sat straighter. Their expressions hardened. This was the moment business empires pivoted on. "Robert," Tom began, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years in corporate leadership, "we've reviewed Olivia's presentation and documentation. The board has reached several conclusions." Robert tried to maintain his composure, but his tie had come slightly askew. "Mr. Maxwell, if this is about the account leadership transition, I assure you, this is about far more than that," Tom cut in. "We've determined that the majority of Thompson and Barrett's successful strategies for our account were developed using Olivia's proprietary methods. Methods that, as of this morning, you no longer have legal right to use." The blood drained from Robert's face. That's not possible. Our contract." "Your contract," Sarah Martinez interjected, "covers standard agency services. Ms. Mitchell's innovations were developed independently, properly documented, and legally protected. She owns them. Which means," Tom continued, "every campaign, every strategy, every innovative approach that drove our success. You can't legally continue using them without her permission." Robert fell heavily into a chair. "We can develop new methods, in time for the Asian market expansion, the European product launch, the digital transformation initiative." Tom shook his head. "Those projects require immediate action, and from what we've seen today, your new team isn't equipped to handle even basic account management." Jessica, who had been silent throughout, suddenly stood. "Mr. Maxwell, if I could just—" "Ms. Stevens," Tom said kindly, "this isn't about you. You were simply a pawn in someone else's poorly planned game." He turned back to Robert. "Which brings us to the board's decisions." I opened my briefcase and withdrew 3 documents, sliding them across the polished boardroom table. First, Tom announced, "The Maxwell Group is terminating its contract with Thompson and Barrett, effective immediately." Robert's hands began to shake. The Maxwell account wasn't just 40% of the agency's revenue. It was the cornerstone of their reputation. Losing it would send shockwaves through the industry. Second, Tom continued, we're announcing the formation of Maxwell Digital Innovations, a new division focused on digital transformation and investment strategies. Olivia will serve as executive director, with full autonomy to build her team and implement her methodologies. And third, I added, speaking directly to Robert for the first time, I've prepared a comprehensive list of every client campaign that utilized my proprietary methods. Your agency has 24 hours to cease using them or face legal action. Robert's facade finally cracked completely. You can't. This will destroy your reputation? I finished. Your position in the industry? The things you tried to take from me? I smiled professionally. Consider it a valuable lesson in digital disruption. The press release goes out at noon, Tom added. I suggest you use the next 2 hours to prepare your agency's response. And Robert? The board remembers how you handled Olivia's contributions. We'll be watching to see if you try to spin this. As if on cue, phones around the room began buzzing. The industry grapevine was already active. Thompson and Barrett's stock would start dropping the moment the markets caught wind of the Maxwell account loss. Olivia, Tom said, standing to signal the meeting's end, shall we show your new team their offices? I gathered my materials, watching Robert slump in his chair, his career imploding in real time. Jessica had already slipped out, probably updating her LinkedIn profile. One more thing, I said, pausing at the door. Those strategy documents you asked Jessica to review yesterday? They were decoys. Simplified versions I created specifically for the transition. The real innovations, the ones that actually drove our success, those never left my personal files. The look of complete defeat on Robert's face was almost worth the 7 years of watching him take credit for my work. Almost. The next few weeks transformed the industry landscape. Maxwell Digital Innovations became the talk of the business world, with our innovative approaches attracting clients and talent from across the globe. Thompson and Barrett's stock fell 60% after losing not just the Maxwell account, but several other major clients who discovered their campaigns relied on my methods. Robert resigned 3 days after the board meeting, his reputation in tatters. Jessica landed at a smaller agency, hopefully wiser about being used as someone else's corporate pawn. And me. I built the kind of digital innovation powerhouse I'd always envisioned, surrounded by talented people who were valued for their contributions. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office, reviewing applications for our expanding team. A message popped up from Tom. Heard Robert's trying to launch a consulting firm. Should we be concerned? I smiled, thinking of the sophisticated digital strategies we were now developing, far beyond anything I'd created at Thompson and Barrett. No, I replied. He never understood that true innovation isn't about taking credit. It's about creating value. My new team was gathering for our morning strategy session. Through the glass walls of our modern offices, I could see them collaborating, sharing ideas, building on each other's insights. Every one of them had been carefully chosen not just for their skills, but for their integrity and collaborative spirit. The best revenge, Tom had said during our first official board meeting, isn't just succeeding. It's succeeding so spectacularly that your former critics become cautionary tales. Looking at the industry reports on my desk, Maxwell Digital Innovations now valued at 10 times Thompson and Barrett's peak. I had to agree. Robert had tried to sideline me, to take credit for my innovations, to replace me with someone he could control. Instead, He'd inadvertently pushed me to create something far beyond anything he could have imagined. Something built on real innovation, true collaboration, and the understanding that the best business strategies aren't about quick wins or taking credit. They're about building something that lasts. Last week, a junior analyst stopped by my office. "I heard about what happened at your old agency," she said. "How do you prevent something like that here?" I showed her our innovation tracking system, where every team member's contributions were documented and credited, where collaboration was rewarded more highly than individual acclaim, where value was measured not by who could take credit, but by what we could create together. "The truth is," I told her, "the best protection against corporate betrayal isn't revenge. It's building a culture where such betrayal becomes impossible." She nodded thoughtfully, then hesitated. "And the rules about documenting our independent innovations." I smiled, thinking of that leather folder that had changed everything. Document everything. Protect your work. But most importantly, create something so valuable that anyone who tries to steal it only reveals their own limitations. As she left, I glanced at the framed article on my wall. Maxwell Digital Innovations, Redefining the Future of Digital Strategy. Below it sat a small plaque with the words that had become our division's unofficial motto: "Innovation protected is power preserved. Innovation shared is power multiplied." Robert had taught me that lesson, though not in the way he intended. And somewhere out there, struggling to rebuild his career, he was still learning it. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon always takes me back to those early mornings at Sullivan's Diner, watching Mom work her magic at the griddle. I'm Sophia Sullivan, and this is the story of how my brothers tried to erase our mother's legacy, and how a weathered recipe book changed everything. A restaurant is more than just food, Mom used to say, whisking batter in the pre-dawn light. It's memories made around a table, stories told over coffee, comfort served on a plate. She'd demonstrate each recipe with graceful precision, adding pinches of spices without measuring, creating dishes that made our little diner the heart of downtown Mill Creek for 40 years. My brothers, Michael and James, never understood that. They saw the worn vinyl booths, the decades-old coffee machines, the cracked tile floor that Mom refused to replace because it had character. They didn't see what I saw. The history in every scratch, the love in every recipe, the magic that made ordinary ingredients extraordinary. I practically grew up in that kitchen, watching Mom transform simple ingredients into dishes that people drove hours to taste. Her blueberry pancakes weren't just breakfast. They were clouds of perfection that made food critics write poetry. Her chicken pot pie had a crust so flaky it made pastry chefs weep. And her mysterious sunshine sauce had customers begging for the recipe for decades. "Family secrets stay in the family," she'd always say with a wink, adding another unmarked ingredient to the sauce that made everything it touched taste like heaven. While my brothers escaped to college and corporate jobs, I stayed, learning every recipe, every technique, every secret that made our diner special. Mom never wrote anything down, or so I thought. "It's all up here," she'd say, tapping her temple. "When you cook with love, measurements are just suggestions." The day Mom passed away, 6 months ago, the diner lost its song. The morning rush felt hollow without her voice calling out orders. The kitchen seemed too big without her presence. But I kept cooking, kept serving, kept her spirit alive through every dish that left the kitchen. Michael and James showed up for the funeral in their expensive suits, made appropriate sad faces, then disappeared back to their lives, leaving me to handle everything. The only time they called was to complain about the diner's outdated image and limited profit potential. It's a money pit, Sophia, Michael would say during his rare visits. Mom was too sentimental to modernize, but times change. The property alone is worth more than the business, James would add, eyes fixed on his phone. We could sell to developers and all make a fortune. But I held firm. The diner wasn't just a business, it was Mom's heart and soul, her legacy to the community she loved. Besides, I knew something they didn't. It happened 3 weeks ago, while I was cleaning out Mom's old office. Behind a loose panel in her ancient desk, I found it. A leather-bound book, its pages yellow with age, filled with handwritten recipes. Not just Mom's famous dishes, but secrets passed down through generations of our family. The first page bore an inscription: "To my daughter Sophia, who understands that cooking is love made visible. These recipes are our family's heart. Use them wisely. Love, Mom." As I turned the pages, my hands trembling, I discovered this wasn't just a recipe book. It was a culinary treasure trove. The mysterious sunshine sauce, a revolutionary blend of ingredients that could transform any dish. The pancake recipe? A technique that had been lost to time. Each page contained not just ingredients and methods, but the kind of culinary innovations that modern chefs spent careers trying to discover. I was still processing this discovery when James and Michael burst into the diner yesterday morning, matching smirks on their faces. "Guess what, little sister?" James announced, straightening his designer tie. "We found a solution to our problem." Michael nodded, looking around the diner with barely concealed disdain. "We sold the place. Developers are turning it into luxury condos." The world seemed to tilt. "You what?" "It's a great deal," James continued, pulling out documents. "The new owners take possession next week. We just need your signature since you're technically a co-owner." "You can't do this," I whispered. "This place is Mom's legacy." "Mom's gone, Sophia," Michael said, his voice patronizing. "And this place is worthless, except for the land it sits on. Time to grow up and accept change." They didn't notice my hand slip into my apron pocket, touching the recipe book I'd been studying every night. They didn't know about the calls I'd been getting from famous chefs who'd heard whispers about Mom's secret recipes. They had no idea that just yesterday, a celebrity restaurateur had offered 7 figures just for the sunshine sauce recipe alone. "The papers are just a formality," James was saying, holding out a pen. "The deal's already done." I looked around the diner, at the counter where Mom taught me to roll pie crust, at the booth where she helped me with homework, at the kitchen where she created culinary magic for 40 years. Then I looked at my brothers, these strangers in expensive suits who thought they could erase all of that with a signature. "Actually," I said quietly, "we need to talk about Mom's real legacy, and why this diner is worth more than you could possibly imagine." Michael laughed. "What? The outdated equipment? The ancient recipes?" I smiled, thinking of the book in my pocket, of the offers already coming in, of the look that would soon replace those smirks on my brothers' faces. "Let me make you boys some coffee," I said, heading to the kitchen, "and then I'll show you exactly what Mom left behind." The morning sun streamed through the diner's windows, catching the steam from the coffee maker, creating a halo effect around the worn counter. Mom always said the best revenge is served like the best meals, with perfect timing and just the right ingredients. I was about to show my brothers just how right she was. I set 3 cups of coffee on the corner booth table, watching steam rise as my brothers impatiently checked their phones. The morning sun painted shadows through the vintage Sullivan's Diner window sign, creating patterns on the worn tabletop. the same table where Mom used to test her new recipes. Can we hurry this up? Michael drummed his fingers on his leather portfolio. Some of us have real jobs to get to. Funny you should mention real jobs, I said, sliding into the booth. Tell me, how much did these developers offer for the diner? James smirked. $2 million. Far more than this outdated greasy spoon is worth. I pulled out my phone, opening an email I'd received yesterday. Interesting, because Marco Romano just offered me $3 million for a single recipe. The silence that followed was delicious. Marco Romano, the celebrity chef with 17 restaurants and his own cooking empire, was a name even my corporately obsessed brothers recognized. You're lying, Michael finally managed. I slid my phone across the table. They huddled over it, reading the email from Romano's business manager. Their faces paled as they reached the dollar figure. This is a joke, James stammered. Romano wouldn't. Oh, that's just for the sunshine sauce recipe, I continued casually, sipping my coffee. He hasn't even heard about the pancakes yet, or the pie crust technique that Gordon Walsh called revolutionary when he dined here last week. Gordon Walsh, the 3-star Michelin chef? Michael's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. I nodded. Turns out Mom's outdated recipes are quite valuable to the right people. I reached into my apron and pulled out the leather-bound book, especially when they're part of a collection that spans 3 generations of culinary innovation. Their eyes locked onto the book like sharks scenting blood. I could practically see dollar signs reflecting in their designer glasses. If this is true, James said slowly, then as co-owners of the diner, those recipes belong to all of us. Actually, I countered. Mom left the book specifically to me. Check the inscription. They read Mom's handwritten note, their expressions darkening. This doesn't change anything, Michael snapped. The sale agreement is already unsigned. I cut in. And incomplete without my approval. But here's what you don't understand. The recipes are just the beginning. I pulled out my laptop, opening the files I'd prepared. Over the past 3 weeks, since finding Mom's book, I've been documenting everything. Testing recipes, recording techniques, upgrading equipment. And people have noticed. I showed them the reservations list, packed solid for the next 6 months. The write-ups in food blogs. The messages from celebrity chefs and restaurant critics begging for tables. Last Tuesday, Anthony Chin from Taste Masters came in disguised to try Mom's pot pie. He called it, and I quote, a masterclass in comfort food elevation that makes modern molecular gastronomy look like amateur hour. That's impossible, James protested. This is just a diner. No, I corrected him. This is a culinary legacy. Mom wasn't just cooking. She was innovating. That sunshine sauce. It's a completely unique process that creates flavors nobody has been able to replicate. The pancake recipe? It involves a technique that professional chefs have been trying to figure out for decades. I opened another email. The Food Network wants to feature us in their Hidden Gems series. The Culinary Institute of America is interested in documenting Mom's techniques for their archives, and 3 different restaurant groups have approached me about franchise opportunities. Michael leaned forward, his business instincts finally engaging. How much are we talking about? The recipes alone? Industry experts value them at 8 figures. The diner, with its established brand and growing reputation, add another 0. But the developers, James began, can find another location. I finished. This spot, this diner, with its history and its secrets. It's worth more than any luxury condo project. I pulled out a folder of my own. So here's my offer. I'll buy out your shares. Fair market value, based on current professional assessments of the business's potential. You walk away with more than your developer deal would have paid, and I keep Mom's legacy alive. Or, Michael's eyes narrowed, or I go public with everything. The secret recipes, the celebrity chef endorsements, the franchise potential. Watch how fast your $2 million deal evaporates when developers realize what they're trying to tear down. James reached for the recipe book. I pulled it back smoothly. The book stays with me. Mom's orders. This is blackmail, he sputtered. No, I corrected. This is business. Isn't that what you've been telling me to learn about? My phone buzzed. Another message from Marco Romano's team. They were raising their offer for the sunshine sauce recipe to $4 million. Take the night to think about it, I said, standing up. I have a diner to run. Oh, and you might want to stay for breakfast. The food critics from the Times are coming in to try Mom's blueberry pancakes. Apparently, they've heard some interesting rumors about a secret ingredient that changes the entire structure of the batter. I headed to the kitchen, leaving them staring at their phones, frantically Googling recent reviews of Sullivan's Diner. Through the service window, I could see them huddled together, whispering urgently, their developer's contract forgotten on the table. Opening Mom's recipe book to the pancake page, I smiled at her handwritten notes in the margins. The secret isn't in the ingredients, Sophia. It's in knowing how precious things are and protecting them. The morning crew was arriving, tying on their aprons. The prep list for today included 3 of Mom's signature dishes that food critics had been raving about. Soon, the diner would be full of regular customers and culinary professionals, all drawn by the magic that my brothers had dismissed as worthless. I fired up the griddle, the same one Mom had cooked on for decades. As the surface heated, I swore I could hear her laugh, proud and strong, echoing through her kitchen. The battle wasn't over. I knew my brothers well enough to expect resistance, schemes, possibly even legal threats. But I had something they didn't. Not just Mom's recipes, but her wisdom, her passion, and her understanding of what made food truly special. The recipe book sat safely in my apron pocket as I began mixing the pancake batter, adding each ingredient with the precision Mom had taught me. Outside, the line was already forming. Locals who'd loved Mom's cooking for years mixed with food critics and celebrity chefs, all waiting to taste what my brothers had tried to destroy. Time to cook, I whispered, hearing Mom's voice in my head, and show them what priceless really means. The next morning, Sullivan's Diner hummed with an energy I hadn't felt since Mom passed. Every table was full. Regular customers mixed with food critics, celebrity chefs trying to decode our recipes, and even a few nervous-looking real estate developers. I was plating Mom's signature pancakes when my brother stormed in, wielding folders of legal documents and matching scowls. "This ends now," Michael announced, slapping a stack of papers on the counter. We had our lawyers look everything over. As majority shareholders. Actually, a smooth voice interrupted, you might want to review the original ownership documents again. Marco Romano himself stood from his booth, cutting an impressive figure in his chef's whites. The celebrity chef approached the counter, dozens of phones recording his every move. "You see," he continued, "your mother was quite clever with her business structure. Sophia isn't just a co-owner. She's the controlling partner of the restaurant's intellectual property, including," he smiled, "all recipes and techniques developed on these premises. James fumbled through his papers. That's impossible. We checked. Page 6, subsection C, I said quietly, sliding a highlighted document across the counter. Mom added it during the last revision 5 years ago. You both signed off on it without reading, too busy with your real jobs to pay attention to diner paperwork. Michael's face turned an interesting shade of red. This is ridiculous. It's just a bunch of old recipes. Old recipes? Gordon Walsh stood up from another booth, his 3 Michelin stars practically gleaming. Young man, your mother invented a sauce stabilization technique that revolutionizes flavor profiles. That single innovation is worth millions in the current market. And the pancake methodology? Anthony Chin emerged from the kitchen, where he'd been observing our breakfast prep. It completely reinvents the relationship between protein structures and heat application. I've offered 7 figures just for that process alone. My brothers stared as more culinary celebrities revealed themselves among the diners. The Food Network crew, filming discreetly in the corner, captured everything. But the development deal, James weakly held up the contract, has been withdrawn. A sharp voice called from the door. Catherine Martinez, the development company's CEO, strode in. We don't demolish culinary landmarks, gentlemen, especially ones featured in tomorrow's New York Times dining section. She turned to me, smiling. However, we would be interested in discussing a renovation project, preserving the diner's character while upgrading the facilities to handle your growing customer base. My brothers slumped into counter seats, their expensive suits wrinkled, their legal ammunition useless. I poured them coffee, Mom's special blend, of course. You know what's ironic? I said, sliding Mom's pancakes in front of them. If you'd ever actually eaten here regularly, you'd have known what we had. Mom wasn't just cooking, she was innovating, experimenting, perfecting. Every dish held secrets that modern chefs are desperate to learn. Speaking of secrets, Marco Romano interjected, shall we discuss my offer for a Sullivan's Diner specialty restaurant in Las Vegas? Featuring your mother's recipes, prepared under your supervision, of course. And the cookbook deal, added a publishing executive from her corner table. 7 figures, just for the first edition. The cooking show potential is enormous. The Food Network producer chimed in. Authentic family recipes. Real culinary innovation. A great redemption story. My brothers stared at their pancakes, perfect golden brown, the secret technique making them simultaneously fluffy and crisp in a way no other chef had mastered. We could work something out, Michael said quietly. As a family. I thought about Mom's words in the recipe book. Success, like the perfect sauce, requires balance. Too much of any ingredient ruins the whole dish. Here's what's going to happen, I said, refilling their coffee cups. You're going to sign over your shares of the diner to me. Fair market value, as originally offered. In exchange, you'll each receive a small percentage of the licensing profits from Mom's recipes. Not because you deserve it, but because Mom would have wanted the family to share in her legacy. And if we refuse, James attempted one last show of defiance. Marco Romano laughed. Then your sister takes these recipes and opens a new restaurant without you. How much do you think this property will be worth when Sullivan's Diner relocates 2 blocks away? They signed the papers within the hour. 1 year later, Sullivan's Diner celebrated its reopening. The renovation had been perfect, maintaining the classic feel while modernizing the kitchen and expanding the seating. The original booths were reupholstered, the vintage sign restored, the character preserved, but enhanced. We now serve over 1,000 customers daily. The waiting list for dinner reservations is months long. 3 nights a week, I teach cooking classes, sharing some of Mom's simpler recipes with aspiring chefs. The more revolutionary techniques are being documented by culinary institutes, ensuring Mom's innovations will educate future generations. The Las Vegas restaurant opens next month. The cookbook is already a bestseller. The Food Network series, Sullivan's Secret Recipes, debuts in the fall. Michael and James. They come around occasionally, usually when the quarterly profit shares are distributed. They even eat here sometimes, finally learning to appreciate what Mom created. Last week, I caught Michael trying to reverse engineer the sunshine sauce recipe. I just smiled. Some secrets aren't meant to be cracked. Mom's recipe book sits in a place of honor behind the counter, in a custom display case. Next to it stands her old whisk, the one she used to make the pancake batter every morning for 40 years. Sometimes, when I'm in the kitchen before dawn, mixing those same ingredients, I swear I can hear her voice. The secret ingredient isn't in the pantry, Sophia. It's in knowing what you have, fighting for what matters, and remembering that the best recipes aren't just about food. They're about love. Just yesterday, a young girl sat at the counter, watching me cook with wide eyes, just like I used to watch Mom. Her mother told me they'd driven 6 hours just to eat here. "How do you make everything taste so special?" the girl asked. I thought about the recipe book, about Mom's legacy, about the magic that happens when passion meets innovation, about how my brothers almost destroyed something priceless because they couldn't see its true value. The real secret, I told her, sliding a perfect pancake onto her plate, is understanding that some things are worth more than money. Some things are worth fighting for. The diner filled with the breakfast rush, regulars, tourists, food critics, all drawn by recipes that had almost been lost. The griddle sizzled, coffee brewed, and the spirit of Sullivan's Diner lived on, stronger than ever. Mom would have loved it. After all, she always said the best revenge is served, not just with perfect timing and the right ingredients, but with a side of success that keeps on growing. As for that sunshine sauce recipe, it's still a secret. Some things, like Mom knew, are priceless, not because of what they're worth, but because of what they mean. And every morning, as I unlock the diner's doors and fire up the griddle, I smile, knowing that the real value of Sullivan's was never in its property or even its recipes. It was in the legacy of a woman who understood that true innovation doesn't always wear a fancy suit or come with a big price tag. Sometimes it wears an apron, works a humble griddle, and changes the world one perfectly cooked pancake at a time.